Hi, my name is Rebecca Field of Caslon Publishing, and I'm really happy to share Caslon Learning, our new virtual professional learning system. And we're featuring the Translanguaging Classroom, Leveraging Student Bilingualism for Learning by Ofelia García, Susana Ibarra Johnson, and Kate Seltzer. The purpose of this system is to be practitioner-directed and a system that helps practitioners interact with the big ideas in the book and apply them to their own contexts, share what they learn with their colleagues, and improve on their practice, and collect evidence of their learning that can be used to hold themselves accountable and also to share great practices throughout the district and beyond. The system is divided into chapters. 0 is the launch chapter, and then we have Chapter 1, Context and Purposes, Chapter 2, Language Practices and the Translanguaging Classroom Framework, 3, Documenting Students' Dynamic Bilingualism, 4, the Translanguaging Stance, 5, Translanguaging Design and Instruction, 6, Translanguaging Design and Assessment, 7, Translanguaging Pedagogy and Action, 8, Standards in the Translanguaging Classroom, 9, Content Area Literacy, again in the Translanguaging Classroom, 10, Biliteracy in the Translanguaging Classroom, and 11, Socio-Emotional Well-Being and Social Justice. Okay, let's dive into Chapter 1 and take a look at how it's structured, because that's, close to where you'll start. We've divided each of the chapters into guiding questions, which are intended to activate participants' prior knowledge and then set a foundation or a purpose for learning. Key terms, which are the terms that are highlighted in the book, and you find them in the glossary. Activities, which are shorter activities where people can work with each other in the group to interact with the big ideas of the book. So for example, it might be with definitions, because some people, in the case of translanguaging, have competing ideas about what translanguaging means and how appropriate it is for their contexts. And then my favorite part is the reflection and action questions. This is where participants take what they've learned, they apply it to their own classrooms, they have a guided set of questions so that they can provide evidence of their learning. Let's go in and see for Chapter 1. So what does the term translanguaging mean to you? If you choose, now what's important to know about this is not a one-size-fits-all system. Facilitators, and I'll get to that in a minute, can choose which guiding questions, which activities, which key terms, and which questions for reflection and action, what schedule to use with which participants. So as you make these decisions, you might choose the question, what does the term translanguaging mean to you? Participants can go here and they can take a look at a response. They can write a response. Now, a person can come and write a response to my response if they want to, or when we all finish, when all of our group members finish, we can view the group responses right here. So if you're a facilitator, or if you're an administrator, or even a member of the group, you'll be able to see what everybody else has said about this particular term, for example, what your questions are as a basis for your conversation for getting started. The next thing are key terms. So for example, these are some of the key terms for this particular chapter: bilingual zone of proximal development, critical metalinguistic awareness, that goes on. Let's take a look at bilingual zone of proximal development. And we're going to add it to our vocabulary notebook. You can see term added. I'm going to go over here. This is my individual vocabulary notebook, and this lets me really make sense of some of the new terms in the book. So in my vocabulary notebook, I'm going to go down to bilingual zone of proximate development. I have some others already in here, and I'm going to open this part, view, edit notes. I like to do this kind of an activity with in professional development or professional learning communities, and also with multilingual learners, because it gets us a chance to really work with the vocabulary, not just read and memorize, someone else's definition. So what's your definition of the bilingual zone of proximal development? What does it mean to you? What kinds of things have you heard that resonate with you about that? What connections do you make with other terms? For example, the zone of proximal development by Vygotsky. What comments and questions do you have to get started? So the vocabulary notebook, again, you can submit it into your vocabulary notebook. You can just close it up to keep it so that you have your own notebook like that. And then you can go back and continue your work in the chapters. So then the next thing to do is choose activities. So in the activities, you could co-construct a shared conceptualization of translanguaging, compare different translanguaging contexts, because a big part of chapter 1 is to demonstrate that translanguaging is appropriate in any context. Translanguaging means the language practices of multilingual learners, as well as a pedagogy that draws on those language practices. And we feature in the book, and they feature in the book, a dual language bilingual classroom, 5th grade, a high school secondary social studies classroom that's taught by a monolingual English speaker, and most of the students are Latinx students with a wide range of expertise in Spanish and English, and then an ESL classroom where the students have a wide range of different languages and cultural practices that they bring with them, and the teacher shares some but not all. So what you'll get to do is think about your own context relative to these contexts and see how ground yourself and in your own practice and apply what you learn throughout the book to your practice. A really important part of the book is the 4 purposes of translanguaging. Some people are critical of translanguaging because they think it's kind of like anything goes, and that's absolutely not the case. The 4 purposes for translanguaging are first, support students as they engage with complex content and texts, strengthen linguistic practices for academic context, make space for students' bilingualism and ways of knowing, support students' socio-emotional development and bilingual activities. And this activity, there's a form for you that you can see at the bottom, and it gives you directions about how to relate your own goals, a teacher's goals for teaching, to the purposes for translanguaging. Because again, we're trying to connect teachers' practice with what's happening in the book. Finally, my favorite part is the questions for reflection and action. So for example, in this, you could choose to either reflect on a multilingual classroom if you're mostly teachers, or you could reflect on your program for bilingual learners if you are administrators of the program, or if your leadership teams do both. So at number 1, for example, what you can see is that we provide the facilitator's role, and we make concrete what is the evidence of learning. Create a multilingual classroom profile, and we tell you exactly what to include on that. And then to support your process, we have questions where you can answer, and then your response will be posted for other people to see that you can respond to, as we saw in the other questions. Who is the teacher? Everything is guided so that you can work, you can share. How are your students performing? What evidence do you collect? And then at the end of each of the reflection and action questions, you review your responses and produce evidence of learning. So, and you're encouraged to attach your response, your evidence of learning, to this particular question. And what you can see is that there's a lot of different ways you can different things you can do. For example, you could make a link, you could attach images, you could attach a video, you could make tables. Whatever way helps you provide evidence for of your learning to share with the group. You can share your evidence of learning at the beginning of the next session if you like. The point is to make sure that whatever you do, you take a look at the book, you apply to your own context, you share with your colleagues, you reflect on practice, and you improve as you go along. So it's focused, sustained, teacher-directed, and teacher-driven. When we go back to the sidebar, the left-hand bar, we can see that you have the chapters, as I mentioned. Your glossary is here. Your vocabulary resource notebook is here. We also have resources. So for example, all the appendices from the back of the book you can find right here, and you can download them, and you can fill out the form, and then you can upload that or attach that to any of the questions that call for it. We also have made in the resources, you'll also find group documents. So when you make a document anywhere that you want to have for a group, you can just upload it. Like anything that you make at home, it might be something that you're sharing that you worked on independently. You can upload it and everybody will be able to share this. Now, I hope what you can see is that we've made a system that teachers and administrators can use. It works around the gradual release of responsibility. We encourage, with the questions we ask, teachers and practitioners to interact with the big ideas, apply them to their context, work it out with each other. With Translanguaging Classroom in particular, I'm really excited to see the kinds of evidence you come up with about translanguaging in your classes, because that's what we need to really move the field forward. We've had a lot of conversations about translanguaging, the pros and cons over the last few years, but we really need to see what it looks like, what the possibilities are in practice. Now, this is the first of them. This is, Caslon Learning is in the early access beta site right now, which means that we're still working on this. What you can do is, for people who want to participate in this pilot stage, you can buy 10 copies of the Translanguaging Classroom, and we'll give you access to this system during the pilot phase for free. And what we hope is that you'll give us feedback about how the system's working with you, what questions you have. As you can see right here, there's a contact us place where you can just write all of your questions in and we'll keep up with it. And after the pilot stage, we will incorporate your feedback into our revisions. And when we finish working out any of the wrinkles in the site, we will start to feature other books, other Caslon publications, until we finally feature our whole library. Well, that's about it. I hope you like it. I look forward to hearing from you, and ciao.